Jewish Education in Media is pleased to present L'Chaim, a program that highlights the people, issues, and events of importance to the Jewish community. Now here is your host, Rabbi Mark Golub.
From the offices of B'nai Zion in New York City, I'm Mark Golub. Welcome to this roundtable. I have to tell you, you're coming in the middle. We've been here for a while already, and it's just been a wonderful conversation. I wish I had the cameras running and the mics on, but we're thrilled to have you join us now. As we discuss some of the major events that have been occurring in the Jewish world at large, I want to introduce to you four wonderful people who have come to sit at this table and to talk about Jewish life today, beginning with someone you know very, very well. On my left, Micah Halpern, syndicated columnist who frequently appears on various television and radio networks, including Shalom TV, offering analysis of events related to terror, the Middle East, Muslim fundamentalism, and the politics of the Arab world. Micah is also the author of the best-selling book entitled Thugs, How History's Most Notorious Despots Transformed the World Through Terror, Tyranny, and Mass Murder. I'm also joined by a wonderful individual who is most well known professionally for his extremely successful public relations firm, 5W, Ronn Torossian, who is also extremely involved in Jewish causes and the state of Israel. While living in Israel, Ron was one of the co-founders with current Knesset members Danny Danon and Yoel Hasson of Yerushalayim Shalanu, Our Jerusalem, which promoted Jewish settlement in the Arab sectors of Jerusalem. A dear friend who I've wanted at this table for quite some time, Ilan Safit. He's the chief editor of Yediot America, the U.S. publication of Israel's largest daily newspaper, Yediot Achranot. Ilan, who was born in Israel, is now also assistant professor of philosophy at Pace University and is the director of the university's Center for Ethical Thinking. And I'm joined by someone I've wanted to meet for a long time, Bari Weiss, the news and politics editor at Tablet magazine, the daily online magazine of Jewish news, ideas, and culture. Before joining Tablet, Bari was an opinion editor at the Wall Street Journal. She's written for Haaretz, the New York Sun, and the Forward. And I thank all four of you so much for joining me. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
So we go immediately to a topic that has received so much attention out of the state of Israel. We had a mega unity coalition of 92 Knesset members in which Kadima and Likud came together, and it looked like it was going to be a very exciting time. Many people were optimistic about what could be achieved if there was, in fact, for the first time, a coalition of that strength that maybe could change the political system, change the way in which the minor splinter, especially ultra-Orthodox parties, held power over smaller coalitions. And then we just saw Kadima walk out, ostensibly over the decision by Benjamin Netanyahu to dissolve the Plessner Committee, which was charged with working out ways of implementing new procedures for bringing both the Haredi and the Arab Israeli into the IDF and other forms of national service. The question, and Mike, I'd like to begin with you. When you look at where Israeli politics are now, what does it mean for Israel that the coalition, which everybody is so optimistic about, Time magazine is writing about King Bibi, has suddenly dissolved? What's it mean?
Well, firstly, it means that Time magazine doesn't understand Israel. But that shouldn't surprise you and the people around the table, and hopefully the people watching the show. That's for certain. The reality is that the concept of a universal draft is a truly essential component of the mainstream of Israel. And to misread that is a big mistake by Bibi. And to misunderstand the implications of that politically for the future of his own party is also significant.
Did he make the mistake?
Yeah, I think he made a mistake. I think that he miscalculated that Kadima would pull out, and as a result of that, when Kadima pulls out, They're taking with them the people that believe, and again, this is across the board. A general concept of universal draft is accepted within the vast majority of Israel. I'm not talking about just over 50%. I'm talking the vast majority of Israel. To miscalculate that is to miscalculate the political move in the future. Unfortunately, it's going to be very hard for him to get this back unless he goes to the universal draft, which is still possible. To disband the committee, I think, was a big mistake, because the committee was actually making headway. It was making headway in a lot of different ways, and there are ways of doing it. I'll just throw out some basic ideas. Firstly, the most important thing is to differentiate between Arabs and Haredi in terms of understanding this issue. It's just not universal draft in general. Each community and each constituency needs specific issues. For the purpose of our conversation, I think it's important to focus on the ultra-Orthodox. It is very easy to accommodate to their issue. They're concerned that at 18, the kids are too young to be thrown into this worldly environment. Hence the word secular. Actually, in Greek, it means sekulos, means worldly, to throw them into the secular environment. That being said, push it off. Push their draft off till they're 24, till they have kids, till they're married, till they're much more stable, till they're less likely to fall into the issues that they're worried about. And then automatically, it will fall by the wayside. This issue will fall by the wayside. And I think that the committee was moving towards that decision. I think that decision could be acceptable to the rabbis also. And I think it would be a much wiser move.
I thought the issue between Kadima and Likud on this issue was how rapidly the ultra-Orthodox would be taken into the IDF. That nobody, either on Likud or Kadima, was arguing that there shouldn't be participation by the ultra-Orthodox, the Haredim, in the IDF, but that on the one hand, Kadima wanted it to be immediate, and what Likud was arguing for was a gradual process.
No, the big issue was that the Haredi parties were starting to batten down the hatches. They were going to war. And the question was whether or not the Likud and its leadership, Bibi, was willing to take that step to move to war against the Haredi. I feel he was not willing to make that.
Ron, do you agree? Do you see it the same way?
There's a few things that I disagree with. First of all, if you look politically, I would argue to you that the headline King Bibi is still very much in effect, in the sense that there is nobody on the left or in the so-called center which can overtake Netanyahu today. I agree with much of what Micah said, but I'll asterisk it by saying that if I'm Netanyahu and my government falls either from the ultra-Orthodox or from Kadima, I would much rather it fall from Kadima because I'm still keeping my electoral base safe. If you're looking at, again, the base, this is still a very strong government. I was very disturbed to read the New York Times editorial this weekend, which spoke about this liberal democracy and the problem that exists because this government fell. Well, this government has more of a majority than either Obama or Romney is likely to have should either of them win the election. And this is still a very stable government. I think that the question also remains if Kadima will even survive. Because when you look now at what's going on, half of them are talking about leaving the party. So again, Bibi is the master politician, and in my book remains King Bibi, at least for the foreseeable future.
You do not believe he made a mistake?
Again, looking politically,
yes,
as the politician and the master strategist, he doesn't lose points, and in fact, Mofaz has probably signed his death warrant as a politician. Because Kadima today, where do you go from here with this?
All right, Ilan, how do you see it? Who made a mistake? Who's the hero? Who's the bad guy?
It's very hard to find heroes there. And I think the issue itself has gained a very sudden momentum. All of a sudden, the draft has become the main issue. Mofaz never talked about it before the Plessner committee was set, and all of a sudden it's the issue to dissolve the government over. And I think the more political gains that Netanyahu is making, it's the less he is gaining in terms of a leader, of someone who can really lead, who can really not jump over hedges, make friends, or keep his base. I think with Bibi, it's been for a long time that he's failing on leadership. He's being attacked from right and left. He is very charismatic and very popular, and he keeps, unlike in his first term in office, in which he got hit very hard and had to stay away from politics for a while, but he came back strong, and he has a big liking by the people to him. But a very strong And I think justified criticism, because he's not doing things, he's pushing things away. He's constantly stalling
Let's not forget the economy in Israel is also tremendously solid. It's one of the few places in the world where everywhere else you have a tremendous economic crisis.
Right, but the people are poor. The economy is very good, but the people are poor. And what happened last summer, in which you had hundreds of thousands of people in the street, including people who are doing well, saying something is not working here. We've got too many difficulties, too many hardships. It's impossible for young people to buy their own apartments. People are moving back to live with their parents. There's poverty in levels that hasn't been seen before in Israel. So the economy is strong for a good section of the society. Poverty is at very alarming levels. And what happened last year, when you had so many people out in the streets, people don't go in the streets because they think that everything is good. Say, oh, the economy is good, I'm going to stay in. And people
right, and now the government's preempting those same protests this summer by going out and beating them with, having the police beat them before they even have a chance.
The government is not having the police beat anybody. If there's a few police who beat somebody, they're disciplined. The
point is the government wants to take action so that there is not
action. People can go and protest however they want. They need to get protests. They need to get permits, just like any other democracy anywhere else in the world.
Did you see the photographs of? I'm not particularly sympathetic to the protests, but did you see the photographs of the police with their batons beating Daphne Leaf?
There's nowhere in the world where you wouldn't see police confronting protesters who are illegally protesting. Nowhere in the world that you wouldn't see that.
Why weren't they confronted last summer?
Last summer they had permits. This summer they didn't. I mean, there's a rule of law.
So there is a political decision here. We'd give permits last year.
We won't fill out a permit and you get a permit.
But there was a decision last year. And it's not government, it's local government, right? It's the city of Tel Aviv specifically.
Right.
It's the city of Tel Aviv. There was a decision to give permits last year. There was a permission not to give permits this year, with the outcome of having footage of Daphne Leaf, a very charismatic young woman, bleeding and being beaten by police.
Come back to the question. Will the decision at the moment, will the breakup of the coalition government hurt Netanyahu, and was he at fault?
It's hard to say. I think that the election is always around the corner in Israel. I don't remember when was the last government that lived out its full life. And
although this one will.
It might, but I'm not saying it as necessarily as a negative thing, because, okay, so this is the kind of politics that goes in Israel. You fight for survival. Sometimes it could be good.
Okay, if the answer is you're not sure?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Barry, when you looked at it, first of all, do you blame either Kadima or Likud? What do you think it means that the coalition that was 92 members is now down to the low 60, 64, something like that?
Well, the thing about the coalition that interested me, and that a lot of kind of smart political observers wrote about it at the time, was that this was a war coalition. You look back at Israeli history, and you see the moments where there are giant coalition governments, and what does that mean? It means that we're going to war. So that was kind of the way that I looked at the coalition the entire time. The question of, I wonder, what is Kadima even about? I don't understand what they stand for anymore. So that's the question that I'm ultimately left with. As for the question of Haredis serving, or ultra-Orthodox Israelis serving in the army, I think that's important, but I think the bigger question is one of integration. And if those same people were in the workforce, would most mainstream Israelis be as frustrated as they are with that population?
I want to tell you what Izzy Liebler said on Shalom TV, just to see if any of you react positively or negatively to it. His read was that Kadima joined the coalition for purely political motives, and that had no intention of staying in the coalition, and that ultimately what they were trying to do was avoid early elections where it looked like they would lose seats. By joining the coalition for a period of time, they basically now have created a situation where the term will run out, and they still have to face what will happen at the end of this term and new elections. But they may feel, from Izzy's perspective, that they're going to lose considerable power. And therefore, it was sort of a sham to begin with. Does any of that resonate with you? What do you think is going to happen to Kadima going forward?
Well, there are a lot of questions that you asked. The first is Izzy Liebler is wrong. And he's wrong because, not because they want power or they'll lose power, because they will lose power. Remember, Kadima was the largest party, and they were unable to form the government, and that's a very important element.
Although people blame Tzipi Livni personally for that.
And as they should, as they should. She was a failure, and the party failed in the opposition also. So that being said, yes, they're going to lose power, and they're certainly going to lose seats. There's no doubt about that. All that being said, there's another issue at stake here, and that is that what Mofaz did is he took a stand on an issue which is uncontroversial in Israel. Universal draft is a non-controversial issue, and he now has a card to play against the swing voters who could go to him, who may have voted for Kadima last time and might now go to Likud. He has a card. The card is Bibi had the opportunity and failed at it. Mofaz is a real strategist, as is Bibi. They're not doing things just for the sake of doing them, right? For the sake of doing them. And the question is whether or not they overstepped or they didn't overstep. I'm asserting that I think that Bibi made an overstep, thinking that he can get the people back on the question of the universal draft. I do not think he can. Why? Because fundamentally Israelis are sensitive to that. Not just because...
Sensitive to the fact that Haredi should be serving.
That people in Israel should be serving unless they have a personal excuse. There should be no exception to a general population,
will you accept
a general
that
constituency.
if he does what you're saying, then he loses the ultra-Orthodox?
Yeah, he will lose them as members of their...
So who's a more natural partner for the coalition?
And the question would be whether Shas fits in the ultra-Orthodox category or not, because most of their constituents serve in the army, which is a very, very important element to discuss in terms of these issues. That being said, the power of the discussion of the war cabinet is important here, because what happens is Mofaz comes forward as an extremely experienced officer, general, etc., who actually, in the Arabic world, and in the Muslim world, he's actually born in Iran, which is sort of interesting also. And when they refer to him as the murderer. They refer to Mofaz as the murderer because that's how strong he is. He's going to play that out in terms of his election in the future. I don't know if they'll run to the end of they have a whole another year and 3 months to the end of the term. We'll see. If Bibi stays in power until December, he will be the second longest standing prime minister in the history of Israel. That is mind-boggling, considering the history of Israel.
Ilan basically said he's still very popular. Is there anybody,
yes, absolutely.
Is there anybody else as popular?
Well, that's
or
the
who
argument
could challenge,
between Ron
who
and
could
Ilan.
challenge?
No, there's no one on the horizon, but that doesn't mean necessarily that's the case. Remember, Israeli elections are not just about personalities. They're also, I know this is going to sound strange, there's also a party element here. Only for one election in the history of Israel was a prime minister elected directly. Okay, and it's important for us to realize that, and the viewers to realize that you don't really vote for a person.
That's correct.
You vote for a party. And it's important to see that in terms of the development. And the party has power, because why? Because the apparatchik, it's the Russian word. The apparatchik is hugely important. Yes.
I'm sorry, when voters vote for a party, are they thinking of the person?
Sometimes. But sometimes they think of their job
Ilan?
and their education and their culture and everything else.
It has changed. It has changed. Well, 92 was that elections in which Rabin was elected, which you had the one-time direct votes. You had 2 votes, one for the party and one for the
But
candidate.
now people vote for a party, and whoever's number 1 becomes the prime minister.
Right.
Correct.
Or gets the chance to form the coalition government.
You know, when people are asked, when you do all the questioning to check the waters, it's always question, would you vote for this party when this person will be number 1? Will you vote for this person? So there is very much a
does
star.
it change?
It does. It does.
So the person does matter.
Yes, or at least in the culture in which, in the writing about it, it's constantly compared. Who would you vote for? There is a star system, in other words. And they're trying to match the stars to electability of the party.
Ilan, I want to understand, from your perspective, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is it to the average Israeli that the system be changed to bring the Haredim into service in the IDF?
I would say that it is not as important. There is a feeling of, I don't know how much your viewers are aware of that. Of course, in Israel, for the majority of Israelis, which are secular, the real enemy is actually the Orthodox Jew. If there is a real split, if there is animosity in Israel, it's between secular and Haredim, which goes through a certain transformation in the past decade or so, but there is a real animosity.
What are they angry about? What are they animus about?
they look different from each other. No, I mean the culture.
Jews care about that?
Yeah, the
Israelis
culture
care about that?
They care very much because they want to be the new kind of Jew. They always wanted to be the new Jew, and the Haredim brings out the old Judaism, which they don't like. Next to that, they're not in the army. What?
They opt out.
Well, that's what I'm asking.
I don't know if they opted out. They opted to have their own culture. They opted
Right.
for their own culture.
They're opting out of Zionism writ large, not
Right.
just the IDF.
Right.
One could argue that Peres and Rabin were also opting out of Zionism at large, and I think when you speak about Israel, you should distinguish between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. You know, it's almost like, I always tell people, we don't live in America.
Right.
We live in New York.
Right.
When you're talking about this concept of Israel,
Right.
the liberal media, okay, might
There's
be
a liberal
speaking.
media?
The
Wait, sorry, how's that?
the
how's
liberal
that
media,
Rabin
the liberal media,
opted
and
out of Zionism?
the liberal media at Oslo is certainly a Israeli concept rather than a Jewish concept, and that's the discussion you're having here about whether it's a Jewish state or whether it's a state of Israel, and they're not necessarily the same thing. But you are getting there when you're speaking about, you know, people hating the ultra-Orthodox. Let's be clear, these numbers you're talking about with the army, it's less than 1% of the so-called ultra-Orthodox. Right. It's less than 1%. So let's not talk about this as this humongous issue. You know, on right and on the left,
Right.
Likud voters will agree with everything you're saying. That's not a controversial.
That's my point. That it's not a humongous issue, but there is a cultural war. So I'm trying to put it within the context of a culture.
But it's a tiny percentage of the
in,
people.
in real numbers, but not in concept. In concept, it's the whole world.
But Likud
Why is
doesn't
it?
agree.
Why is it the whole world? In concept, it could be two people. It's an issue of fairness. Actually, the idea is the concept of a
Likud
friar.
doesn't disagree, right?
No, I'm not saying one does. I'm saying that the concept of a universal draft says that some people are more equal than others, and some people have chosen, and the system, forget about them, the system has permitted them not to be a part of. And the other element, which is sort of important also, is that you can't legally work unless you've satisfied the army service.
No, that's not true.
No, you can't be a yeshiva student and work.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
you cannot
for
do that.
yeshiva.
You can't be a yeshiva student and work.
Right.
You could,
Yeshiva, not a.
Well, that's what we're talking about.
Not the.
and then ultra-Orthodox yeshiva. You can't
Not a-
have your exemption from the army for yeshiva studies, and work at the same time. And actually, that's an important issue.
They
Because
all do.
what we're doing is right, but because many do. So there's a lot of the economy is off the books. But there's something else which is important here: the fundamental unfairness of that issue, as well as from the societal point of view. What we're doing is we're not pushing a community through a training exercise, and a very important one. I don't mean shooting a weapon. I mean computers. I mean the world of communication. I mean what we're doing is we're damning an entire community to be of a certain age when they enter the workforce, where their only acceptable jobs will be cleaning the grounds and pushing.
If they work at all.
If they work at all.
If they work at all.
And that is a very, very problematic situation for society
Okay.
to set up. Do you understand my point?
Yes,
here?
I
This
do.
is huge.
I understand.
Even if it's only a few people, but it's very important.
Barry, I want to know the extent to which you feel, regardless of whether it is or is not a number one priority in Israel, how do you think American Jews who read these stories, who are reading Tablet, how important is it to American Jews that somehow the Haredim in Israel are serving in the IDF?
Hugely important.
Isn't it? And why is that?
I mean, if I
sometimes feel
told you
about-
the stories
I
that got
sometimes feel it's
huge
more
spikes
important
in
to
numbers,
American
it's
Jews than it is-
anti-Semitism anywhere in the world. It's Iran, and it's Haredi anything. You throw the headline, you know, internet, like censored internet and Haredim in a headline, you're going to get readers immediately. It's fascinating, actually. And I think American Jews, even maybe more so than secular Jews in Tel Aviv, although it's hard to get more distant than that, feel like this is just a totally other world. And I think they're fascinated by it and flabbergasted that this kind of protexia and this kind of ghettoization continues in a modern state.
Does it hurt the relationship between American Jewry and the State of Israel?
Yes, and I certainly think it hurts Israel's perception in the world.
What do you think, Ron?
I think that a mountain is being made out of a molehill. To start with, I think that let's not forget Israel's not a banana republic. Israel's a country of its own, and I'm not clear why one would care what American Jewry's concept of this issue is. I'm not clear why that's of concern to the State of Israel. When one talks about American Jewry, let's not miss demographic trends. Peter Beinart and his ilk, their grandchildren will not be Jewish, period. There is no such thing in American Jewry 100 years from today if you're not a traditional Jew. Reform Judaism won't exist. Let's not miss the words of, the Torah for many of these people is the Torah of liberalism.
I think you need to raise your hand and close your eyes when you make such prophetic statements.
So should we celebrate the rise of the Haredi?
When we talk about Haredi, does Haredi mean the for example, the great Chabad movement? Does Haredi mean, when we talk about the religious, right? So let's separate Haredi. I'm not disputing anything in terms of, the Haredi issue you're talking about, but this religious issue, for example, these American Jews, so they're also afraid of the Kippat Strugot, the people, modern Orthodox, who are fighting. Is American Jewry also afraid of them? Because if I read Peter Beinart, then I would learn that the reason the American Jews are so turned off from Israel is because of Yvette Lieberman. It's quite a concept. I mean, I would question how many people who are non-involved American Jews even know the name Yvette Lieberman. So yes, I mean, folks, you can say that I can, predict the future, but if you look at surveys, if you look at facts, the facts and the surveys, not of some right-wing, organization, but of the UJA, says that all these things I'm saying are absolutely the truth. If your kids are not getting a Jewish education, your grandkids won't be Jewish. That's not something that's prophetic, it's fact.
But that's different than dismissing the idea that what goes on in Israel, that the idea that the Haredim, for example, aren't universally conscripted somehow doesn't matter in the rest of the world.
Doesn't American Jewry also oppose Netanyahu by that concept?
I actually don't know the numbers on American Jews and Netanyahu.
I would guess that, again, when we're talking about liberal Jewish media and liberal Jews, putting aside the religious, absolutely, I'm sure that they think that Yossi Saridis should be prime minister. That's what American Jewry thinks of.
I think you're doing something very dangerous here. I think you're trying to define belonging to the wide tent of the Jewish people according to certain political and ideological tendencies. I've been to many events of organized Jewry, of people from different backgrounds, and I'm quite impressed and amazed by all the work that's being done to keep Judaism in its pluralism alive. And I'm very
Where do you see those numbers working outside of the religious community?
Outside of the religious community, in the JCC Manhattan, if just looking at this, in the 92nd Street Y and 92nd Street Y Tribeca, at the 14th Street Y, all the places where I see Jews get together, come together, all kinds of special events that they do. I see people are interested. I see in Tablet Magazine, right, and in these new media outlets, which you've got a lot of young, very engaged, very passionate young people who wants to take part in the Jewish life. While doing other things, not only, but they want to take part. They seek Jewish education for their children to a certain extent.
Right. It seems to me you can have two attitudes. One is, if you look at the numbers, the amount of people that are involved in independent minyanim like Hadar is minuscule, and you could say, who cares about them?
I'm not saying who cares.
No, but that's
factually not.
Okay, but that is the attitude I feel you're reflecting. Or you can say, let's try and strengthen those numbers because I don't want to be a part of Judaism that is homogenous. That doesn't interest me.
But the religious community, who says homogenous, right? You're talking about a Karli Bach movement is day and night from a young Israel, and is day and night from
that's really very much within the 45-yard lines, but
it's within the 45-yard lines of what Judaism is today. In terms of what Judaism is tomorrow, it'll be even more within those yard lines.
I want to make sure everybody understands what you're saying. You're suggesting, basically, that the future of American Jewry is going to be limited to a large extent to what Bari just calls the 45 to the 45-yard line, meaning the Orthodox world, although you're saying within the Orthodox world,
traditional and observant.
I'm not
there
using
is a
He said
wide
Jewish
spectrum.
education and Jewish day school. The reality is that you can't read the studies differently. You can in a lot of studies. But the prediction of the study is that Jewish education is the fundamental predictor of Jewish affiliation in the future. And I'm smoothing out your comments if I can. The reality is that we are confronting now as a Jewish community, and we're moving off topic, but it's very important for me to speak about this. We are moving right now, in terms of the Jewish community, to define ourselves where we're confronting a freedom that we have never, ever experienced in the history of the Jewish people. And as a result, people, once upon a time in your parents' world and their parents' world, they couldn't choose not to be Jewish. They had to be Jewish in some way, some form. Now, really, the concept of anti-Semitism allowing or forcing you into the Jewish world is irrelevant almost. There is anti-Semitism, don't get me wrong. I mean, there is anti-Semitism. That's a concept. So what people have to choose to be Jewish, and it's not easy because we're confronting then the entire world of excitement for, imagine being a 15-year-old young boy or girl and your choices between the Jewish event and the non-Jewish event. How's it going to happen? The reality is, I'm trying to say this, and this is what's so weird about it. Creating and constructing Jewish environments is the only way to perpetuate that future thing. And I think that Ron is correct in reading the study from that point of view. Where I think you're wrong and is from this point of view, and that is that we should not change who we are because of this situation. We are a society, and a Jewish society, of tradition, based on tradition. And the reality is that as the non-traditional movements continue and build and everything else, they become most successful when they go back to tradition. And that's how people come back to Judaism itself. And actually, we even use the expression in English, coming back to Judaism. Not just choser b'teshuvah in terms of the religious world, but also in terms of the liberal world, coming back to Judaism. Rabbis stand on the pulpit and they say, come back to Judaism. They don't say, go forward into Judaism in the liberal world, which would be an expression.
We are, as you say, off topic at the moment. I want to bring us back on topic.
That's a good one.
On some other time, it might be interesting just to have the four of you come back on this. And I want to say only because at the moment we're talking on Shalom TV, and that you're talking on a television network that is dedicated to the notion of Jewish pluralism, and also is very respectful of many of our viewers who are very far. But we're in Nashville, Tennessee, we're in Austin, Texas, we're in small cities and towns all over the country, where the kind of Judaism you're talking about on West 79th Street is as foreign as can possibly be. And most Jews in America are struggling still, number one, to feel comfortable with their Jewish identity, and number two, find some community in which they can be, without being in any way Orthodox,
I haven't said Orthodox. You keep saying Orthodox. I haven't said Orthodox.
I understand.
Traditional is very different than Orthodox. Very different.
It depends what you mean by tradition, because what you're suggesting.
Where does pluralism exist elsewhere in the world? This kind of pluralism, Judaism.
It is a.
Elsewhere in France, Australia, England. Where are the reform schools?
It's okay if you're against Jewish pluralism. It's okay. I'm just telling you that at the moment what you're talking to is a vast Jewish audience here, all over America, who doesn't know what West 79th Street is and would be thrilled to have any sense of Jewish identity and Jewish community. And in some way, by the way, and this may be true for Tablet as well, and in some way for Yediot Achranot or Yediot America, and some of the stuff you do, people sometimes find community through Shalom TV. They may find Jewish community through Tablet, and it has nothing to do with traditional observance, but that's a different topic. I want to change the focus to two things that I saw in today's newspaper as we're taping around this table today.
Stay connected with all things Jewish. Follow Shalom TV on Facebook and Twitter, and watch daily news and full episodes and much more on YouTube and, of course, at shalomtv.com.
Originally, the film started at a college. A lot of people don't remember the very opening of the film starts at a college, and they asked me to go to the college to get a sense of the college. And when I went to the college, there were bells that rang every hour. Every hour you heard this at the college. I don't know why, but I guess that they identified the hour. So when I came home, this was what I did for the first few days. That was it. That turned into, and again, days go by, you know. That turned into thinking about long notes because Barbra Streisand's singing. And then, of course, we were blessed with a fantastic title. I mean, the book was a great title. So what you do is you make sure that in the song you leave enough room for the title. And that's slowly but surely how you plot the song.
Today, in the New York Times, Dani Dayan, who is with the Council of Jewish Communities in Judea, Samaria, writes a piece in the New York Times, Israel's settlers are here to stay, in which he argues Israel, the Palestinian Authority, Jordan, Saudi Arabia are all content with the way things are now between Israel and the West Bank. There's economic prosperity, he points out, for both Palestinians and Israelis. A new Palestinian city, Rawabi, is being built next to Ramallah. Checkpoints are coming down. Tourists are visiting Bethlehem and Shiloh. And the two-state solution, from his perspective, has lost all momentum. The status quo is here to stay. At the same time, in the New York Post, Amir Taheri, who is an extremely well-respected Iranian journalist, you see him a lot on CNN, writes in the Wall Street Journal. He writes today in the New York Post, the Arabs really want a caliphate. They have no interest in a two-state solution. I want to know, and I'm starting with Ilan, I want to know at the moment, are we still in a world where there is within the Middle East, I'm not talking about New York City, or Paris, or Berlin. I want to know whether you think there is in the Middle East any real impetus toward this two-state peace solution.
There is an impetus. There are, I think that the settler movement is very strong in not allowing for it to happen, and it didn't start with the settlers. It started from '67, from a labor government that allowed and then encouraged settling of the territories occupied in 1967, which have a very clear goal not to to make it very difficult to separate from these territories later, because once you've got people on the land, things get more and more difficult. Since Oslo, the number of people, the number of settlements, the number of outposts has grown. Went far beyond anything that was before. And they have a very clear goal, to make it as difficult as possible to separate from these pieces of land, or to make it the amount of land that will have to be given back to those who live there will be as small as possible. And that makes the two-state solution, if the two states are really marked geographically, very, very difficult. You can have two states also when it's not the geographical borders. You can have two political entities which share a certain land. That is a possibility. But in terms of dividing the land, it becoming very difficult. Of course, you can have a situation in which you say, we do draw the lines according to 67 lines, and all the Jewish settlers on that side are part now of the Palestinian state. You can say that. You can try and push for that possibility.
And what is your opinion of the Edmund Levy Supreme Court Justice for the State of Israel coming out with a report that if you look at the military definitions of occupation, Israel is not occupying the West Bank, and Israel does not violate any international law by establishing settlements on the West Bank, and as far as Levy is concerned, Israel should do more of it. What's your attitude?
I think it's a mind-boggling case here. I don't understand how someone who was on the Supreme Court for so many years can come up with such a document when the Israeli government itself knew that it has to remain its status in the territories as an occupying force. Otherwise, they have to acknowledge the people who live on that land as citizens who have rights and protections from the state. So since '67, all Israel governments made it very clear our status there as an occupying force until a final settlement will be made. And on that legal basis, any action that was taken was covered.
So you're critical of it.
It's mind-boggling.
If it's not an occupation, what is it?
Who are they occupying?
What is it?
Which country are they occupying?
That is a semantic.
It's not semantic.
Yes, it absolutely is.
They're occupying close to 1.5 million people. I mean, people are more important to countries in my book.
Which language do they speak that's
Arabic.
distinctive?
They speak Arabic.
And which country are they from?
They were from a political situation in which they belonged to Jordan.
So we're talking semantics. So nobody can answer the question of where they're from.
No.
What is
they're
Israel
from
doing
that
there if
land
not occupying them?
It's called our country. It's called the land of Israel.
All of it?
Sure, if you read the Bible, which is where Judaism comes from,
wow.
Yeah. And more than that, if I start a fight and if I lose the fight, to the victor go the spoils, even if the Jews win.
So do you think
so
it's
the
a
Jews
good
were
idea?
attacked. The Jews were attacked The Jews won.
Okay.
Hey guys, we won the right, and we got attacked.
So we're
guess
going to
what?
lord over these people forever?
Tomorrow, if Jordan attacks, God forbid, tomorrow if Egypt attacks and Israel fights back and Israel won, should they just say, okay, you killed so many people and we should just step back?
So Israel, according to this argument, should occupy or deprive rights.
Occupying? What are they?
People.
Deprive rights. Their rights are, where do Arabs live better than in the state of Israel?
Oh, please.
Well,
oh
please. It's a
This
factual
is
argument,
it's
folks.
You're talking about Israeli Arabs or Palestinians?
Both of them. Both of them. Both of them. Where is the lowest? I mean, God, we took facts or we took cement. Where is the lowest birth? Where is the lowest infant mortality rate?
To me, this isn't.
You know,
this is an argument.
We don't have enough time to tread. No, I want to just push this. We don't have enough time to tread the point to point. I think there is a general point that the Jewish people also in Israel are split over, and I think the general point. I think they are, and I think the general point is,
the election's been pretty clear.
As a Jew, can you allow yourself to rest at peace with a people who don't want you to tell them what to do? And those
the whole world doesn't want the state of Israel to exist.
That's not true.
It's not true. Who wants the state of Israel to exist?
That's not the question.
That's
the question
a separate point.
It's not a separate point. You're stating
that you're saying
that the Arabs don't want you there.
Israel,
Well, guess
we have
what?
a right to do something deeply unethical in other Middle East.
I'm talking about Palestinians who have military presence, have military law over them, telling them what to do, and when things escalate, they move into their houses, they put them in all kinds of camps, they put them in prison.
Which camps do they put them in?
Detention camps.
No, let's simplify it.
It's
Let's simplify it.
And
is this your vision of Zionism, what's going on right now in the Palestinian territories?
I'm not aware of any Palestinian territories. That I'm not aware of. What I'm aware of is the state of Israel and Judea and Samaria and Gaza that I know about. The vision of Zionism, I want to break the news, right?
So
which the New York Times doesn't get.
The
purpose of the state of Israel.
1.5 million people do not exist.
You know the purpose of the state of Israel? It's not to get peace, right? New York Times sometimes misses it. The state of Israel doesn't exist so that there can be peace, right?
I don't agree with that, but yes, go ahead.
The state of Israel exists so that there's a Jewish country. The state of Israel exists for a Jewish state.
To protect the Jews and occupying another people.
Which people are they occupying? What was there before?
You can continue to say that there's no such
you can't
thing as
answer the question.
Palestinians. Okay, let's just call them Arabs by your logic.
Arabs, so they live great in that country. They live great.
They don't live great.
Well.
They do not live great. And
I don't know what to say to that.
They do not live great. They are under occupation. They're told what to do. They're under a force that they don't want there.
I want to get back online if I could, because I want to try to explain Justice Eben Levy's point of view here. And legally, actually, it fits into his whole gestalt, his world. In 2005, when the Supreme Court made their decision as to whether or not it was legal to transfer Gaza to the Palestinians, he was the single dissenting opinion. That's an important issue. 10 justices said it was legal. He said, no, it's not. The reason it wasn't is because he didn't see this in the context of settlement, which is the exact expression that Ron is developing here. It was no surprise that the Prime Minister chose him to head the committee to discuss the justification of settlement, right? You're creating something which is none other than, I mean, remember, it's a political environment, which is getting political support by the committees and the legal documents and the ideas that are coming out. Now, that being said, it's also important to realize something, that the notion of settlement, from Levy's point of view, is dramatically different, and occupation is dramatically different than military occupation. And he wants that to be clear. He says, firstly, because of the fact that Israel got the Judea and Samaria, or the West Bank, from a place called Jordan, which had never really taken it. Never had control over it, and it was within their world. It is their right by whatever. He says, therefore, it cannot be considered legally occupied. Now he's just following his same ideas from time to time. Now, he did the same thing with regard to his concept with Gaza. It was exactly the point. Gaza, under the Egyptians, was not a part of it. It was Egypt controlled, but it was not Egypt's sovereignty. They did not want it, okay? And that was exactly the point. So he just follows through in the same logic. Now, why am I doing this? I'm coming back to the same ideas. Not because of one thing or the other, because I wanted to be clear that Netanyahu could have chosen any number of people to chair that committee. He chose Levy because it was what it was going to do, and he's a very good jurist. He's not coming out in the middle of nowhere. He's consistent in his ideas. He's coming out to say, this is the point of view that we as the government of Israel in Likud share. And he actually gave support for that. And I don't think there should be any surprise.
And do you agree with it or disagree with it?
That's irrelevant. What I'm trying to do is get you. Now, I will then answer your question. What I wanted to do was I wanted to give the context of the explanation, which I think is very important.
Now,
here's my answer then.
He had valid juridical reasoning for his argument.
And a minority opinion, mind you.
An extreme minority
Okay,
opinion.
and the minority. That's why I said it was 10-1 on the Egypt side.
The court is not exactly, the courts, media, academics are not
Understood.
exactly,
Understood.
Yes,
Understood. But I'm giving the context.
The reasoning he gives has a validity. Absolutely. Okay.
And that was the purpose. Now, do I think that it's right to call one thing one or the other? Look, I believe the following in terms of understanding of the Palestinian issue. I believe that there are areas within the Palestinian Authority that they are absolutely in control of, and it is almost impossible and unheard of Israel to step into those environments. I want that to be absolutely clear to the listeners and the viewers here. That is, there are totally controlled autonomous regions within the Palestinian Authority. We've had this conversation before.
That's
and
correct.
it's absolutely, there are areas and there are other areas which are outside of that, and that's another question. I believe 100%.
Make sure everyone understands who's watching. On the West Bank, there are different regions,
Yes.
and they go by letters, A and B and C. And in certain of those areas, Palestinians have 100% control of their life.
Even though, according to treaty, Israel at certain points can still enter that, they do
doesn't.
not. They do not. I want that to be clear to everyone also. In other words, by treaty, they are
Including in the
enabled.
holiest city of Judaism.
They are able to do it, but they do not. And I think that that's important to recognize. That being said, I think that there is some rapprochement that exists. There is certain inequities. There is no doubt about that. There is no doubt about that. That being said, also, the only way to control the environment is through occupation. The Supreme Court understood that, and that means that there's two different laws that exist there. One is a military law for the people who are not Israeli citizens, and the other is Israeli law for the people who are Israeli citizens. And that's the way it is right now. It would be nice if there were someone on the Palestinian side to negotiate with to discuss a two-state solution. You know me for a long time. I believe that that is the best solution. I do not see it as happening right now.
Because you don't see someone on the other side.
I do not see that the sides can agree on anything. I do not see the Palestinian Authority, even to the point where the World Bank came out just recently and said, you don't have the infrastructure for a state. Now, for a year, world lending authorities have been saying that is not the case. And I was arguing that they were not looking at the right documents, and I was deeply concerned that it became political. It is clear to me that they cannot sustain themselves without foreign aid. And the interesting thing about the foreign aid to the Palestinian Authority is at least only a third of the foreign aid promised is actually delivered. The only groups that actually deliver foreign aid in toto is the United States and Israel to the Palestinian Authority. Everyone else pledges and doesn't give.
But do you think it's a good thing if the message from various Israeli politicians, or Israel in general with this Levy Commission, the government, is basically there's no hope and we're never going to have a two-state solution? I just don't think that's good for the state.
Well, I think
for that to be the message.
And I'm on Ronn's side on this one, and I'll tell you why. For too often, Israel makes decisions and thinks of what the world is going to think if they decide something. And there are certain elements which really, it's none of their business. And we have to realize that Israel has to make decisions based on their own best interest, and not necessarily the best interest of others. And one of the prime ministers is actually really good at this, and he was not very popular. But he just passed away recently, and that was Yitzhak Shamir. He did not care what the United States thought. And actually, as a result of that, Bush 41, the father, as he's called in Hebrew, Bush Ha'av, he's not called Bush, he's called Bush. Bush, so Bush the father, 41, and he had no relationship at all. It didn't mean that it was the end of the discussion between Israel and the United States. It meant that Shamir said, I'm not going to make decisions based on that. That being said, they went to Madrid and had a conference.
He was dragged to Madrid. He was really dragged.
Nonetheless. But he didn't do it. And it's important for us to see that Israel has to also think about their own best interest and not necessarily, believe me, the United States is thinking about theirs. For the United States' best interest, peace between the Palestinians and the Israelis is important to them. For the United States, it's really important to get a resolution with Iran or with Syria. It's not necessarily the best resolution for Israel. And I think that's important. Do you understand what I'm saying?
But here's the point. For me, it's very difficult to think, how can Israel not think that it's at its best of interest to resolve that conflict?
That's an excellent question.
It's the number one issue that cannot be let go of until it is resolved.
It is an excellent question. It is an excellent question, and I'll tell you, and I will answer it. It is a nuanced and complex society which has several different points of view on that very question.
That's why I look for leadership.
Right, and you're absolutely correct. Some believe that they've just had enough, and I am of the opinion that last year's huge rally on social issues about the homeless, about people who just don't have the money to buy houses, about young people who aren't getting the jobs they want, was based on the fact that the left in Israel was so frustrated with the peace movement that they had nowhere else to go but there. And they went and actually focused in. And I would argue, by the way, just to say, as a social commentator, which I am, that is a huge growth for Israel. Here's the answer. They are absolutely divided on the question of peace in Israel. One said, I've had enough with the Palestinians, and they say, it's like what Sharon said, call me when you get the chance. When you guys are ready, call. And the other that say, we can't stop, but we have to constantly move in order to get peace. And I see the left in Israel is now being is discouraged because they too are not getting the response.
You've been quiet.
Ilan, I think I don't think anybody would disagree with you that of course the Jewish people all want peace. The question is, where is anybody in the Arab world who begins to speak like a moderate? So as much as the Jews can sit around and bang their fist, we want peace, we want peace, we want peace, with whom? With whom? People talk about this democracy as something holy. Maybe democracy isn't so holy if you choose the wrong people. You gave them democracy in Gaza and Hamas won. You gave them democracy in Gaza and Hamas won. You give them democracy in Egypt. Well, look what you got. And let's not forget what happened in Germany. Hitler was democratically elected. So if the people on the other side don't want peace, you can sit and cry and scream all you want. Nobody to talk to. There's nobody to speak with.
I think this is kind of slogans which I don't see in reality.
Who do you make peace with?
You make peace with whoever you can make peace, because it is in your own interest to resolve this issue. This issue, there's no turning away from it. And if I've got
you can apparently say that there are no Palestinians.
Right, and that's the way to say it.
There's no
they're not
distinct people
democratic. You can say there is no partner.
That's something that Newt
You can
Gingrich
say
says.
there's no one to talk to.
And by the way, the Jordanians will agree with me.
It's a legitimate question.
Yes.
For people in Israel.
Yes.
For American Jews and anyone who desperately would like to see peace.
Right.
There's a legitimate question. Right. Is there somebody on the other side who wants peace as badly, and who, if they make peace, the peace will be an honest peace?
Maybe
of course there's not.
I think they want to be left in peace.
That's a legitimate. That's a legitimate question. It's a legitimate question.
Yes,
and what is your answer to it?
There's a lot of people there who wants to be left in peace. Just like Israelis nowadays, they say, we don't want peace. We don't want love relationship. We want to be left in peace.
Yeah, and that's what the article said. What the article said was, everybody right now just says, leave me alone. Everything's fine just as it is.
If I could give perspective,
that's what they're saying right now.
For maintaining a Jewish majority in the state of Israel.
I'm sorry?
I mean, remember when the Levy Commission came out and Shimon Peres said, it's hard to maintain a Jewish state without a Jewish majority. That was his response to the commission. And I agree. I don't think that there is a legitimate partner for peace now. But I think the problem is, how can you continue to be a Jewish state when you are, whatever you want to call it, occupying, overseeing, annexing, whatever?
And I'll give you my answer. The only reason to be in control of another piece of territory is because the alternative is worse. At the moment, there is an overriding Jewish principle. Jewish, not American, not democratic, Jewish. And the principle is against suicide. You have a primary responsibility to, first and foremost, before anything else, protect yourself and your family. And once the Jew has done that, he has many obligations to be as caring for, as lovely, and as respectful of someone else as is humanly possible. And I believe the Jewish tradition demands more of us in that regard than any other people. But it is only second. And the issue that I find among people who care is, they say, I wish we could make peace, but don't ever ask me to make peace that in some way jeopardizes my life and my wife's life and my children's life.
But I think you could make the argument that occupying the Palestinians is suicide in slow motion.
No, I think the demographic argument is wrong. I think academically it's wrong, and the people who focus on the numbers can, and I'll try to give a quick scenario on this.
Is that what you meant, by the way? It's demographically wrong?
That scenario,
demographic
suicide you're talking
yes.
about. Demographic suicide.
Demographic suicide?
Demographic
And
suicide.
so
that's a different story. I want to deal with this.
It's not spiritual suicide.
I think it is. I think that once you grow generation of the state of the Jews,
By the way,
I think what you-
the Jew has said to anybody, all you have to do is want to live with me in peace.
Say yes.
That's
Just
all.
say yes.
That's all you have to do. And incidentally,
Just say yes.
Just so you understand,
I would argue that
I stand in between right here. My position is that in reality, the state of Israel was created for the Jewish people. By the way, that's a very unmodern, uncontemporary view. At the moment, nobody wants. Nobody's.
That's the words of the words of Ben Gurion, not the words of
I understand.
Jabotinsky.
I understand. At the moment, most Jews are uncomfortable with the notion that Israel is for the Jewish people.
Most American Jews. That's
what I'm saying. I'm saying American Jews are not comfortable with the articulation, Israel is for the Jews. And then the question is, what is the nature of this state that is for the Jews? And Ben Gurion and early Zionism said it very clearly. Anybody is welcome as long as they want to be part of this Israeli Jewish experiment. That when you sing Hatikva, you won't be offended that it talks about Nefesh Yehudi, because you understand where you're living. And if you're willing to live here in peace, you'll be a citizen, and you will also be entitled to every cultural, social, medical right, and you'll be taken care of like everybody else. But one thing you can't ever argue against, you can't want Israel to have a Nakba day, because what you're then saying is you don't want there to be an Israel, and ultimately your goal is to destroy Israel. I'm almost done. My attitude, therefore, is that the West Bank, which was basically no man's land, occupied by Jordan, controlled by Jordan, which we won in a defensive war, we have every right to. And I believe that it is ultimately, Judea and Samaria are ancestral Jewish lands, but it's not wise. There's nothing illegal about being there. There's nothing immoral about being there. It's not wise. And that I also say that although all of Israel on at least to the east of the Jordan River should be Jewish, the Jewish people from 1938, 36, 37, 38 till today have always said, we will share the land. I want to share the land because I believe it's the fair thing to do for a people who feel they have been dispossessed. So it's fair.
Is it moral?
Yes, it's moral. It's moral to say we will share, not because I'm worried about demographics. Because the best you can do with the demographic argument is put it off. Because if you're worried,
that's when they cut
Gaza.
That's right. When they cut Gaza, the demographic argument was put off for 25,
you
30
can't
years.
let the demographic argument be persuasive in ideology. So I say, I want there to be a two-state solution because it's fair. We will share the land. That's what the Yishuv said in the 30s. That's what the Jewish community said in the 40s. That's what we tried to do in 48. We will always share the land. We only want one thing. We want people to say, we'll share it with you. And if they don't say that we'll share it with you, there's no Jewish, democratic, Jewish principle, Jewish value, responsibility to say, even though you don't want to share it with me, I will share it with you. I find that to be against every fundamental Jewish value. Now, normally, when you hear people talk about Jewish values, they're only talking about being as lovely and giving as you possibly can be. I want to be as loving and giving as we can be, after I know that I'm not committing suicide.
You're secure.
And if anybody on the other side ever says, I seriously want to live with you in peace, and I can make, and now that I'm willing to do it in stages, I'm willing to prove myself over time, and yes, I will also make concessions. I will take out certain things that are in textbooks and on
they've
television,
agreed to that.
But they haven't done it.
They took the money.
Okay, they took the money. I will do it in stages, but somebody has to show me that they're serious before I'm ready, and I don't even live there, to say to the Israeli who says to me, it's my child. And I don't feel there's anything un-Jewish about that, and that any Jew ever has to apologize for that. I think at the same time, if there is somebody there who's willing to share with me, then that's the right thing to do, it's the moral thing to do, and the Jewish thing to do. But they've got to be willing to share with you.
I think you've got a vast majority of Palestinians in the West Bank who are willing to share it with you.
That's what I'm told.
I think that Abu Mazen's government,
but there's no leadership that does.
Abu Mazen and Salam Fayyad have been quite effective leaders in keeping things together within the territories. I think Gaza is a different story.
Do you think that's true?
And I think by meeting, seeing initiatives on the ground when people go to talk to other people, not governments, not representatives, not organizations, when people go to talk to other people, you can see a lot of cooperation, and you can see also a Palestinian people that really have.
How about if I want to buy a house from that nice Palestinian man? What happens to me if I'm an Arab and want to sell a home to a Jew in the place you call the West Bank?
Well, you don't need to, because
I want to buy his
home. That's a legitimate question.
I want to buy his home.
That's a legitimate question.
No, they won't come and take. No. In Hebron, an Arab sold. No,
the stories that the Levy Commission is looking at land that was taken by the state.
I'm a Jew. Can I buy a home from an Arab? And what happens to him in this place called the West Bank? If he sells me a home, what happens to him?
I think you should go and
punishable by death.
I haven't heard that.
I'm very involved with folks who buy property in this part of the world, and I'm very familiar with how it works.
I don't think
people get killed
for that. I think that you're turning the story around.
You get killed from it.
I think that you're turning the facts around. The facts are that Israel is taking land and taking houses and have been doing that.
It is punishable by death according to Palestinian Authority if an Arab sells a home to a Jew.
The practice is the opposite, that the Palestinians have other people living, building on land that belongs to their families and their ancestors. I'm not talking anymore in levels of states and people, but of families. Family land that the Israeli state come and say, now it's ours, and they buy it. And the settlers come, they don't have to pay for the land. They only have to pay reduced.
That's completely inaccurate.
That's not true.
The court systems are nowhere near friendly to the residents of Judea and Samaria. If an Arab sells a home to a Jew, he gets killed, period. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. He gets killed.
You are saying things which are not true.
Factually accurate. Read
Yediot,
Achranot, I read
it's just not the case. I haven't heard of anyone who got murdered recently
for
executed.
Court execution. In this year alone, there are several cases where Palestinians have actually been tried for collaboration and for selling property, as well as by being spies.
Right. Being spies and collaboration is something else. That's
the basic.
For selling property,
it's under that category. I want to deal with the state issue, the country to country, people to people, leader to leader. Before this set of leaders came into position, they were being groomed, and I sat with them, and and Arafat was just in position. He was just teetering towards the end, and I sat with them and several of their other advisors, and I said to them, just say yes. And I don't think I've ever been in public suggesting this, but just say yes. Because if you say yes, just say yes, I will guarantee that Congress of the United States will actually underwrite investment into Palestinian ideas. If you just say yes to the Israelis, just say yes to peace, just say yes to the plan and go with it. Because I will guarantee that you will have more growth here than you will have anywhere in the world if you just say yes. And now we have to get into a mindset, which is a very difficult thing, because it goes to the question of a mindset of the region, a mindset of the Arabic world, a mindset of the status quo, which is what we were talking about just a few seconds ago also. It's really hard to break status quo in the Arabic world. The Islamic world in general does not like to break the status quo, and that's actually, in essence, the power of the argument in the New York Times op-ed. Status quo works.
Except for the entire Arab Spring, which upended the status quo.
Well, but it didn't, actually.
Well, it could get worse, but it definitely did upend the status quo.
Certain elements have been changed. Other elements have gotten, the status quo actually has even intensified in other ways, and it's worth a longer conversation. Yes, I accept the point, but nonetheless, status quo is the way things work in the Middle East. And it's important to get a sense of this. Just to say yes, though, means that you reject all that which came before, which was a constant automatic no, which is a very common issue within that culture. To say no all the time. Saying no meant that they were incapable of actually changing their lives and making their lives, not just the lives of Israelis, better, which is where your point is. Lives of Israelis would be so much better improved if peace existed. And that's why there's so much frustration on the Israeli side. But they can't improve their own lives because they can't say yes. Because saying yes means that they're going against the status quo, which was...
Saying yes to what?
Saying yes to the concept of peace, saying yes to
Right.
moving ahead with the decisions with the United States,
but that's
saying
not
yes
the
to
case.
move ahead. And
Things,
they can't say
no,
yes.
but things fell. We want to be clear about something. Nobody said, or even Arafat, they didn't say no to peace. The thing that it fell, the thing that fell through, it says we cannot accept, and that still has become the status quo. Netanyahu says once you say yes for Israel as a Jewish state, we can talk. And that was the difficulty to say yes to. And
You're
that is
talking
indeed
about the most recent breakdown actually had to do with
No,
had to do with
that is
Obama,
also
had to do with
the why,
Obama
but that's
saying,
also
had to
the
do with
why
the President of the
Why
United
was that
States
hard
saying,
for him to say yes to?
And the question, we can approach it with saying, oh, because they are Arabs, or because they're warmongers, or because they want everything, or because they want to kill them.
I
Well,
didn't say that.
I'm not saying you're saying.
Please.
I'm not saying that you're saying that. I'm not sure about Ron, but I'm not saying that. You didn't say it yet. You didn't say it yet. But we can also stop and say, wait a second.
Why
And that's the
could
thing.
they
We want to
not
say, we
yes?
want
They
to
want it
take
all,
a moment
yes.
and to understand
Netanyahu said
why.
last week.
What is the difficulty? And the difficulty is indeed of censure. Israel for them is a foreign object, foreign body that they have learned and will learn, are learning and will learn to live with in the long run. But Israel as a Jewish state is a foreign body in a larger region. And they have been humiliated by several armed conflicts, by wars, and on the political. They have been humiliated. And it is the Arab world as a whole internally has to recover and come to terms with this foreign body in it.
And should we make peace before they have?
We have, yes, but we want to think peace does not mean let's love and hug. I mean, we got a peace with Egypt, and what you say, we got to a non-violence, non-interference agreement, and now it takes us another 50 years, 100 years, or a millennium to learn to like each other. But at least we got to the point in which we respect each other's sovereignty. I'm not going to meddle with your business. You're not going to meddle with my business. We have drawn a line. This is yours. This is mine. And we will not cross it.
And your view is there is Palestinian leadership
Yes.
ready to accept that?
Yes.
And you say to that?
I say that one of the things that Ilan mentioned is, the Arabs want to destroy the state of Israel, and you mockingly ask, if I would agree with that. The democratically elected prime minister of the state of Israel recently said that when he eulogized the great Yitzhak Shamir. Shamir's comment about them wanting to destroy us, Netanyahu cited it in his eulogy in front of the Knesset.
And that says
so
what?
when we speak about the great Zionists, for me, Yitzhak Shamir, Zev Jabotinsky, Netanyahu, these folks are very clear. And frankly, people on the right, Jabotinsky followers gave the other side, the Oslo people, the Rabin Peres, only less than 20 years ago, without a Jewish majority, they pushed this through. And when you speak about, peace, there's nobody on the Jewish side who doesn't want peace.
I'm not sure.
But this
I'm not sure that
this
you want
discussion
peace.
couldn't. Of course, you want peace. But why does peace involve throwing Jews out of their homes? Why does peace involve Jews continuing to sacrifice? Right. That's the question which should be asked. There is nobody on the Jewish side who doesn't want peace. I recently issued a public challenge to Peter Beinart.
Yeah.
And I'll issue it to J Street. I will pay $100,000 to Peter Beinart or to J Street to give the same speech that they give in the Jewish world to any 3 Arab countries that they want.
That was
I'll
you?
put it in escrow. That was me.
I
will
that.
pay $100,000 to Peter Beinart or Jeremy Ben-Ami or any of this pack of wonderful Jews if they dare to make that speech.
Which speech?
The same speech that they give on Jewish campuses, the same speech that they give in universities, the same speech.
They'll be shouted down.
They won't be shouted down. My challenge stands. I will put it in escrow with Shalom TV, with Yediot, with Tablet, with whomever you want. $100,000. The rule: they have to go and say they're proud Jews, like they say everywhere on campus, and they have to go without security. Without security, the same way they go to Hebron and other places. They will be shouted down. I would venture that they won't make it out alive.
I'll be happy to hold it. I want to ask a question.
They won't be shouted down.
I want to ask a simple one.
They might be shot. Doesn't like.
Yes.
It means that a Jew is not safe in their world. That's what it means.
Yes,
That's what it means.
but it doesn't mean that.
The Arab world, that's who you're making peace with. I mean, you want them to go and speak on the Upper West Side? You want them to go speak in the Jews in Chicago? You're making peace with your enemy.
It's not like it doesn't matter what he's saying.
I think we should
It's not like it doesn't matter.
And forget,
It's not that it doesn't matter.
My viewpoint is
that
more than a
Jews-
majority in the
that
state of
Jews
Israel. This
are
is not
in danger in a way in the Arab world that Arabs are not in
Ilan,
danger
you're
in the
doubting
Jewish
that Jews
world.
are in danger in the Arab world? That's a question?
I don't want even to...
Where did Jews live in the Arab world safely?
They lived wonderfully before the state of Israel. Jews lived in the Arab world very well until the state of Israel was set, and that created a conflict in which... Where?
In
Egypt,
Iraq,
in Syria, in
Iraq. There's plenty of
in Algeria.
There's plenty of other
the
countries.
Jews who left in '48 from Arab countries left.
Where do Jews live today? Again, folks, the bottom line is that American Jewry seems to have this infatuation with saving the land of Israel. If everybody can accept that the state of Israel has brilliant people, startup nation, they can make decisions on their own. Peter Beinart speaks of saving the state of Israel. It's a sick concept.
I will ask you this question.
Follow Shalom TV on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And of course, shalomtv.com.
What you heard Ilan say was that he believes there are people within the Palestinian world who genuinely want to make peace, and we don't mean fuzzy-wuzzy, we don't mean kumbaya, but we do mean that they will not attack from this new Palestinian state, that people will live in peace. Are there people you believe in the Palestinian world in leadership,
with all due respect,
who are willing to do this?
With all due respect to this nice man here, that's an extremist viewpoint in the state of Israel, which has maybe 10% representation.
You
the
do not believe it's true?
It's an extremist statement.
Okay.
Nobody, 10%
Barry,
of the population of Israel would agree with that statement. It's a far-left statement.
Do I believe it's true that there are lots of Palestinians who want to live their life in peace?
There's a Palestinian, is there a Palestinian leadership that is willing to make peace in the terms that Ilan has defined?
No, because they don't have enough power.
And can Israel help them get the power?
I don't know.
Because we would hope your answer is yes. Because that
I don't know.
Yes, I don't know is a very honest answer. Okay, are there people now in the No.
No. There are, actually,
three people at the table don't believe so that's the end of peace, and we can go on, right?
It's not the end of peace. It's not the end of
well, if you don't believe that, there's
here's the solution to the problem, and it's exactly what the Israeli left did last summer, which is focusing
no Israeli left.
focusing internally. The reality is that Palestinian leadership has, by definition, Abbas has said he will not and will have difficulty stopping strikes against Israel. He will condemn them, but he will not stop them. And actually what's very interesting, over the last few weeks, because of issues that are happening internally within the Palestinian Authority, the Palestinian police have started internally policing themselves. And that's an important element.
The strikes come from Gaza, not from the Abu Mazen-controlled territories.
That's
an interesting point.
I'm not talking just about coming out of Gaza.
Was Itamar from Gaza?
What? Itamar was not from Gaza.
But that was a specific pinpoint.
It
wasn't a military operation. It was a horrible act of individual.
Okay. So the power of the Palestinian leadership has specifically not, and this was part of Abbas's style throughout his entire secondary leadership also. When he was under Arafat, he did not want to lead through strength. He wanted to lead through speaking. Under Arafat led through strength. And if you disputed Arafat, you were killed.
Okay. One last question.
Yeah.
If I were a Palestinian leader,
yes,
it seems to me there is so much to be gained for my people if a peace settlement could be worked out with Israel, that I wouldn't put preconditions down. I would say, yes. I would certainly say to Netanyahu, of course I'll meet with you. Just let's meet. What could I wouldn't talk about settlements. I wouldn't talk about Jerusalem. I would say, if you're willing to sit with me, I'll sit with you. Mm-hmm. Why doesn't it happen?
There are several reasons. The most important is that when Obama took office, one of the first things he said about this issue is he went more harsh than the Palestinian leadership had been before him. And as a result, when he said, we're not going to, all settlement has to stop first. And so Obama got himself into a situation where Abbas could not stand up and say, I'm going to be less demanding than the President of the United States. That began the process. And that process we have not, and the Palestinians and the United States and Israel has not recovered from. That's one. So A is the administration, because of lack of understanding, gave Abbas the ability to move away from the table.
More than that, it put him in a box, you're saying.
Right, put him in a box. He totally handcuffed him in a way which is unparalleled in diplomacy.
Okay. And Abbas wishes it had never happened.
I think so. Now, the next thing that happened as a result of that is Abbas now has the situation that if he goes back, he's now a traitor to his country. If he says something back upon which...
You must be horribly pessimistic then.
I am, and I'm a major advocate of the two-state solution. There is no one to talk to at this stage.
Do you have any other answer? If you were Abbas, wouldn't you say, of course I'll talk?
I think they tried that in Annapolis.
I was there.
And it was so clear that it's going nowhere and will go nowhere. I think there were attempts.
And you believe it doesn't go anywhere because of the Israelis?
I think both sides have realized that they do not have a conversation going on, that they've got some kind of diplomatic measures. I think both sides' negotiation points are very clear. I think the current leader on the Israeli side is not the one to bring peace, is not the one to make any gesture to convince the other side that, not peace, a deal. Peace might be a too big word. A deal of an understanding that will allow each side to turn and deal with its internal issues.
And for that reason, you wouldn't even sit in the room with him?
With who? They've done it several times.
You wouldn't do it again. In other words, you understand why Abbas...
I personally would come every time, again and again and again.
Yeah.
I would come again.
Your voice
and again.
agrees in here.
Yes.
What is your answer?
I don't know about that.
What's your answer?
To which question?
Why do you think it is that Palestinian leadership at the moment just won't sit and talk?
But the question is misleading. Would Netanyahu sit and talk?
Yes.
Not exactly. He says once you recognize me as a Jewish state.
Netanyahu has said, I will meet anywhere at any time without preconditions. So
Except
call his bluff.
All right.
Call his bluff. Say to him yes.
Okay.
And see if he doesn't show up.
Okay.
What's your answer? Why doesn't it happen?
Okay.
Why isn't there, I mean, you're asking me why isn't there peace in
No, I'm asking why aren't there talks, do you think?
Because I don't think it's, I think the Palestinians are playing a very, 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 very long game.
That's true. I agree.
They're playing a long game towards what end?
Towards no Israel. I mean, here's where Ron and I agree.
I thought you were sort of an idealist here.
No, I think that somehow got confused in my debate over whether or not there are such people as Palestinians. I was in Bethlehem 3 weeks ago, and I met with a lot of people who are Palestinian. To me, the two-state solution people get caricatured as lovey-dovey peaceniks who are naive and believe that all Palestinians want peace. I don't believe that, but I think a two-state solution is in Israel's best interests, and that's why I support it, and that's why I think it's important to acknowledge that there are such people as Palestinians and to acknowledge Ron.
I agree with Bari. I think Bari's very sound here.
Right.
One last question, and I'll go to Ron.
So that's,
is it Israel's fault that there's no two-state solution now?
I don't know how to answer that.
Ilan would say yes.
Honestly, I don't.
You don't. In other words, you think the answer may be maybe?
I don't think it's entirely the Palestinians' fault. I don't.
How and what's Israel's role in the fault? How does Israel contribute to the no two-state solution?
See, I hesitate to say what I'm about to say because then I'm going to be caricatured as someone that believes that settlements are the obstacle to peace, which I don't think they're the main obstacle to peace. I think Palestinian recalcitrance is. However, I do not think that expanding the settlements helps matters.
Is Israel at all to fault?
Bari can be my spokesperson. I agree with everything she just said. I think that when I say there's no Palestinians, I mean, of course there's Palestinians. I don't think that people don't exist. There's not there's Palestinian Arabs, there's Palestinian Jews. If you were born in Palestine in 1945, you had a Palestinian passport. Palestinian Arabs, Palestinian Jews. But that was Newt Gingrich's fight. He didn't win. Sheldon Adelson might still believe it. The holy Sheldon Adelson. Do I think that there can be?
You said holy?
Oh, Sheldon Adelson is a holy man. That wasn't a mistake. So maybe we can get off topic. But I think again, this discussion we're having around the table, it's great because you have people from left to center.
So I'm the center here.
So when you go from
I'm the center here.
So when you go from left to center, the bottom line is that the furthest left at the table here, again I'll repeat, will be shot in any Arab country. And I'll repeat again, this isn't semantics. I will pay $100,000 to Peter Beinart. I will pay $100,000 to Peter Beinart to make his speech in 3 Arab countries. I dare him.
That's not an argument.
Why is that not an argument? Who are we making peace with? Each other? Who are we making peace with? Likud-Kadima? Who are you making peace with? The peace is with your enemy. So our enemy will lynch you and will kill you if he finds you. It's not about human rights. It's not about my reading level isn't perfect. Your enemy wants to destroy you, wants to kill you. And Israel tried Oslo. Israel tried Oslo.
I saw Israel really flourishing on that story, that they're coming to eat us.
Ilan,
their knives are between their teeth, but they don't need the knives because they're going to eat our flesh with their teeth. And what you're doing, you're continuing it here in a studio in New York City. You're demonizing a whole nation as barbaric murderers.
The leadership of the nation.
No,
because
you're sure that
a Jew today. No,
that's what comes up from your story.
I want to play with my kids. I want to make a living. I want to do everything that we want to do. I'm talking about the leadership of this nation. These viewpoints you're expressing, Ilan, have very little representation in the democratic state of Israel. So all of this viewpoint, with all due respect to Bari and to Ilan, it's not what you're saying is further left than what Labor will say today. So it's not that this is a right-wing fight. This is a 95% Jewish state.
Maybe because you're in PR, you're looking at it this way. I'm not here to represent.
I've worked for the government. I mean, I speak to multiple ministers a week.
I'm here to reflect on the question that Mark put on the table, not to represent anyone. I said sometimes, maybe because a majority says something, you need a minority voice to come up and say, wait a second.
The media is always good at being the minority on the left. The media is...
We have to wrap up. I believe I could go on for hours and hours. Give me some kind of final comment here as you've heard all this unfold.
Yeah, I think one of the classic examples here is that Jews agree to disagree. And that's the beauty of democracy. And that's the beauty ultimately also of democracy, but it's a good part in terms of the dialogue within the Jewish world. And what we've got here is not just tension, we've got exciting tension, but it's not going to be resolved. These issues are not going away. Not going away because we leave the table, we're not going away for the next year. This is going to be staying with the Jewish community for the near future, and I mean years in terms of that.
I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed this, and I don't want it to end, but we all have to go and live a life. So I thank you so much for giving us this much time.
Thank you.
You are Bari Weiss, you were wonderful. Ronn Torossian.
Thank you.
Ilan, Safit, Micah Halpern, you are always welcome at this table. I hope you join me very, very often. Wonderful. And as always, I thank you for being part of this discussion with these 4 extraordinary people. I always love to hear what you have to say. Please be in touch with me. Email me, write me, post on our Facebook wall, tweet me. I look forward to hearing from you. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. Be well, my friends.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support Shalom TV with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double chai or more, to the nonprofit organization Jewish Education in Media. Simply visit the Shalom TV website homepage and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check made out to GEM, Post Office Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York, 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive on DVD with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.
L'chaim is a presentation of Jewish education in media.